Okay, everybody, we are live. Thank you everyone for attending. Welcome to the Fourth Brain Info session. We're so glad to have you here. I see that there is quite a few people watching and waiting. My name's Molly Larkin. I'm the Director of Operations at FourthBrain. We have a great agenda prepared for you today. At any point during this session, please use the YouTube chat at the right. Put in your questions. We'll be answering some of them along the way via chat, and we'll also be answering some of them live in the second half of this session. So first off, again, I just want to welcome everybody. My name's Molly Larkin. I want to tell you just a little bit about FourthBrain, who we are, why we exist, and then we'll jump into more information about the program. So FourthBrain exists to get more people into ML and AI careers. We want to increase the number of people who are in this field, and we are here to create accessible and flexible programs to help you get there. So our programs are career focused, really practical, and really hands-on. I've worked in education, non-traditional education for over 10 years, and I think that this is such a great program with all the good features that we think make really effective learning. Specifically, what we're doing is we're combining really practical hands-on skills with soft skills and communication and collaboration. And we also add an ethical AI component to our programs, which we think is really important in today's economy. So I'm going to tell you just a very brief overview of our program, and then we're going to jump into some details about the curriculum. So first, these are the people you're going to hear from today. I'm here. Brian Spearing, who's the lead instructor for the July cohort, is here. I'll let you introduce yourself in just a minute. We also have Miriam, who's a part of our career services team. And then we have some students and graduates who will also introduce themselves and answer a lot of your questions. So I told you a little bit about FourthBrain. Just a quick overview of this program. So it's 16 weeks. It involves both on your own time and live instruction led by an instructor, who is Brian for this July upcoming cohort. It is a tuition-based program, and we think that this hybrid live online structure is really an effective way to learn. So these are just some basics about the program that we like to cover up front. I know that many of you are really interested in the curriculum, so I'm going to hand it off to Brian. Brian, could you introduce yourself and then tell us a little bit more about the program?
Hi, I'm Brian Spearing. I'll be the lead instructor for the upcoming cohort. I've been doing machine learning for about 20 years, starting out in academia, then moving into industry, holding a kind of a variety of positions. It's data scientist, data engineer, machine learning engineer. But teaching's always been my true passion. So for the last 6 years, I've been teaching data science, machine learning, and artificial intelligence. And so we can talk a little bit about how that hybrid curriculum is going to work. So we can go to the next slide, please.
Great.
Yeah, so what we're going to do is you're going to watch some videos online on your own time. And that's going to give you the foundational knowledge to understand the concepts and what's going on with them. And then we'll have some checks for understanding to make sure you're understanding that video curriculum. But what we're also going to do is come together on Tuesdays, Thursdays, and Saturdays to have in-class sessions. And those in-class sessions are to cover the more complex materials, to provide an opportunity for you to ask questions to the entire instructional team and to work together with your peers on this kind of project-based learning. And that's really the core of this. So you're going to learn through doing. So we've kind of curated a set of progressively more complex projects that are going to guide you through this machine learning curriculum. These are all industry relevant data sets. Some of them are small, some of them are larger. And we've also worked with industry partners to kind of come up with contemporary problems that they're currently facing. And along the way, we're going to kind of learn the modern day skills that you might have heard about with transfer learning, building robust, scalable pipelines. And so this all goes to the outcomes of this program. So we're going to try to get you ready for industry-related jobs towards machine learning. And part of that is not only having the skills and the knowledge, but to clearly communicate those to both technical and non-technical people. So we're going to work on that communication piece, that collaboration piece, And that should allow you to get a really good job coming out of this program. In particular, the curriculum is going to be in Python, and we're going to primarily focus on the TensorFlow framework for deep learning. But along the way, talk about scalable systems, say in Spark or Databricks. And then I'm really excited. We'll talk about model deployment with a very common Python framework called Flask, and an up and coming API that's designed for machine learning called Fast API. And we're also going to talk about cloud computing using the three most common cloud providers: Amazon Web Services, Google Cloud, and Microsoft Azure. Along the way, we'll talk about how to build things with contemporary best practices. So how do you deploy a model? How do you update that model? How do you scale that model out using kind of all the common tools that a machine learning engineer would use on the job? Great. And so what we do is we have two primary parts of the curriculum. The first part is really getting you up to speed on the knowledge and the skills you'll need to use. And we're going to make this progressively more challenging. So initially start with the fundamentals and then start moving to kind of applications of those fundamentals, both in computer vision and natural language processing using cutting edge models. And these projects are going to interleave these ideas together to allow you to do that. And then during the part two of the curriculum, once you understand these fundamentals, we'll start working in small groups and start working on bigger and larger projects where you'll be able to actually learn the very cutting edge and very specific elements that you'll need as a working machine learning engineer, and then bring those problems to the instructional team, and we'll help guide you and kind of shape those projects and help you along the way to answer whatever questions you come across as you work through these projects.
Great. So there are a couple of questions coming in about the curriculum. I'm going to address a couple of them right now. We're going to save a couple of them for later. So one of the questions is about the topics of projects in the course. Specifically, are there going to be computer vision projects? So I'll say one thing, Brian, if you want to add to it, you're more than welcome to.
Yep.
So in that first half of the program, as Brian was talking about part one, everybody does the same projects every week, and there's a variety of topics, including some computer vision projects. For the capstone project that happens in part two, students can choose any topic that they want. So if you really want to dive into computer vision, you can choose a computer vision topic for the second half. And Brian, did you want to add anything to that?
No, just to echo what you've just said, that there's going to be a lot of computer vision projects. Those are kind of the most common examples of this. They're kind of the easiest to understand. And the reason why we picked that, it's easy to figure out whether your model's working correctly or not, because you just look at it and you can understand what's happening. And so that really is why that's kind of a fundamental idea in deep learning.
Great. Yeah, that's really helpful context as well. One more question that's probably a quick one. TensorFlow versus PyTorch. We do use TensorFlow in our program. Brian, do you have any opinions on why you think TensorFlow is a good option?
Yeah, they're both great frameworks. So TensorFlow and PyTorch, they overlap a lot. So they have a lot of the same ideas. The advantages that we found in TensorFlow is that TensorFlow is a little more industry aligned. So it's a little more common to see deployed models in companies with TensorFlow right now. But PyTorch is catching up with that. Also, from my experience of teaching this, it's better to focus on a single framework and get that very deep knowledge of that single framework. Then it's easier to learn that second framework. So we're going to make sure we focus all of our limited time on TensorFlow, understand that framework, and then if you choose to then move to PyTorch, you'll actually find it a bit easier to pick up PyTorch because you'll understand the fundamental principles.
Great. Yeah, that's a great answer. Thank you for doing that. Great. So for everybody watching, please continue to ask questions. We will answer more curriculum questions later. But in the meantime, we'll move on to career services with Miriam. Do you want to introduce yourself and tell us more about career services?
Yeah, thanks, Molly. So my name is Miriam. I'm like Molly. I've worked in ed tech for a really long time. I've placed roughly around 5,000 people. And so when you come to FourthBrain, I'm going to be the person that you meet to help you kind of meet your career goals. So excited to tell you a little bit about career services. So when you come to FourthBrain, you're going to interact with career services in a couple of ways. So we really like to engage with employers throughout throughout the program here. So you'll engage with them in a couple of ways. The first way is through guest speaking. And so throughout the program, you'll have various guest speakers from different companies come talk to you about, their career trajectory into machine learning engineering, or maybe they'll even give you some technical interviewing tips. We had someone from Bosch come who actually walked through the technical interviewing process for Bosch, which is really cool. So guest speaking is one way that you'll interact with employers. We also have mock interviewing. So we partner with a company that does mock technical interviewing for all of our candidates. And we have people of different levels come do them. So I think for one cohort, we had the lead data scientist at the Washington Post conduct mock technical interviews. So that's the kind of caliber that you're going to be working with when you're doing mock technical interviews here at FourthBrain. We also have informational interviews. So you'll be partnered with someone in the program, an employer who maybe has similar interests to you and can advise you on your resume or can advise you on a career path. And this is just a really good way to make a connection with someone and get to know a little bit more about the company. And you never know, maybe that connection will result in a job. So and then lastly, we have project presentation day. And so project presentation day is an event where a bunch of employers come. We had about 60 employers come last time from companies ranging like Samsung, Ibotta, Cisco, and you present your projects in front of them. They'll also have the chance to ask you questions, and maybe they might even put you through an interview process. I think in our last cohort, we had about 4 people go through interview processes after project presentation day. So that's kind of how you're going to engage with employers for career services.
Great, thank you so much. There is one question that came through that, Miriam, I'll have you answer now. And it's about career services for people who are not based in the US. Can you tell us a little bit more about how that works?
Yeah, that's a great question. So the way that career services works for people who are not in the US is you still have access to a lot of this stuff, right? So like guest speaking is something that's for the class. You'll still get a mock interviewing token. You'll still be matched with an advisor, and you'll still be able to attend project presentation day. The only, I think, difference would be, is it would just be like a different type of job search. And everyone at FourthBrain really does their best to kind of help all candidates, whether you're in the United States or outside of the United States, get placed. So,
yeah, the majority of our partners are based in the U.S., but like Miriam said, she will make every effort to help people who are not based in the U.S. Specific to them, but we just can't guarantee that level of expertise outside the U.S. Great, thanks, Miriam. All right, great. We're going to move to the next part. Again, if you have questions about career services, keep putting them in the chat. We will circle back to them. Okay, so how do you join? How do you apply? Who is this program intended for? So the machine learning engineer program is intended for people with at least a year or 2 of Python experience. Many students come to us from data science or software backgrounds, but we have people who come from outside of tech as well. And we really value the perspectives of people who are coming from outside of tech. We think that this is a really great addition to the ML industry. So there is no strict professional requirement. There is no educational requirement. The main prerequisite that we are looking for is Python skills. So you do need to be fairly proficient in Python, either professionally or self-taught. We're also looking for people who have comfort with some of the math skills you need. This is not a math-focused course. It's not a research-focused course, but you do need to have some comfort with probability, calculus, and linear algebra. Most importantly, you need a willingness to engage and put yourself out there. This is a pretty high commitment program. It is intended for people who have full-time commitments, so you can do this while doing a full-time job. The vast majority of our students do have full-time commitments while they're in this program, but it is a busy time, so you need to be ready to commit and put in that effort. We recommend that you submit your application by July 10th for our upcoming July 27th cohort. So there's still a few days left, and I'll tell you about that application process. So very first thing to do is you fill out an online application. It's relatively brief, just about your background, your goals, what you're looking for. And then you'll get a technical challenge. It's focused on Python. There are some additional math questions as well. When you return that, we will evaluate most of the time, or often we can make a decision right then if we think you're ready for the program. Sometimes we'll invite you to have an interview with us and share a little bit more about you, just to make sure that you're set up for success in the program. We're available for questions throughout the process. You can always reach out to us and get answers. I'm going to pause there. I'm just going to look at the questions just to see if there's any focus questions. So a couple things. We don't expect any experience with ML prior to this program. So many of our students have taken an individual course here and there, and that's great. Some students have been modeling, at work. So they're really looking to fill in the gaps in their knowledge. All types of these backgrounds are appropriate for the course, depending on what you're looking for. So no, the short answer is we do not expect any ML experience prior to applying to the course. Great, I don't see any, I'm just looking at the questions again. How much linear algebra and math background do you need? So it's a great question. There's no specific bar, really. We're not looking for math undergrads or anything like that. What we are looking for are people who can, teach themselves the basic, remind themselves the basics of things that they haven't done. Khan Academy, Coursera, Udacity, Udemy, these all have great refresher courses that I would recommend you go and take a look at. These math skills are also part of our pre-course curriculum to help everybody get up to speed before day one. So Python is really the more important skill that we're looking for. These additional math skills are just nice to have if at least you have some familiarity with these topics. Great. Keep the questions coming. We will be circling back, but I want to hand it off to some of our grads and students. So we have 3 grads and students with us today, and I'd like to introduce them. So very first, I'll have Matt, if you want to introduce yourself, tell us what you were doing beforehand, what you were trying to do afterwards, and then tell us a little bit about your experience in the program.
Sure, thanks, Molly. Cool, and I encourage people also keep coming with questions. So my name is Matt Linder. Prior to FourthBrain, I was with the first cohort, the October 2020 cohort. I finished in February. And yeah, prior to that, I actually didn't blur my background because you can see what I did prior to that because I'm sort of surrounded by my former career as a professional musician. I'm not an ex-musician, I'm still a musician, but now I'm a professional machine learning engineer. And that is actually the second part, which is that was my goal. My goal was to go from being a professional musician who's super interested in AI and ML for a wide variety of reasons. It sort of started from a creative perspective of just being super fascinated by these technologies. I've always been into procedural generation, and so that really slotted really nicely into things like NLG and GANs and all sorts of other cool sort of deep learning creative aspects, which I'd been self-studying for a couple of years before I started FourthBrain. And then my goal was to end up with a career in this field. I wasn't too specifically attached to job title, which I think ended up being a good thing because job titles, I think, are one of the most variable parts about this industry. And so that was my goal. And there are a lot of things to talk about in terms of FourthBrain, a lot of things that I think are really great. But I wanted to specifically highlight the career services aspect because I know I think John V and Ron will talk a little bit about some other aspects, but yeah, I think that was so key for me because I showed up with the willingness to learn, with passion and verve for machine learning and AI and what FourthBrain is all about, ready to do all the work. But I think one of the toughest things facing prospective students, prospective people trying to break into this field is the career aspect, is the going from learning. I always think of it this way, where there's curriculum for ML. We talked about it already. You could look at a detailed syllabus for how to learn machine learning, and there's a ton there. It's a really broad field. It's got a lot of depth in certain areas, but it's organized in a way that I understand. It's helpful to have instruction in it for a variety of reasons, but on a fundamental level, it's like a core education topic. Getting a job is not like that. At least I've never taken a course on how to get a job. And that was why I think career services and Merriam were so super helpful to me throughout this process in a wide variety of ways. And so I'll try not to take up too much time, but I'll sort of highlight the fact that uh, every aspect that she described ended up being super duper helpful. The in-class discussions with industry people, the mock interview, presentation day was amazing. It was super cool. A bunch of people I did an audio-based project. A bunch of audio industry people were there and chatted with me, and I had a bunch of contacts coming out of that. But I think sort of the key element for me that I think was super helpful was the informational interviews. And so FourthBrain and Merriam actually set up one of those, and that was really great. I met an awesome MLE, and we hit it off and got to talk about what it looked like getting into the field. But what I think was the key for me is that I pestered and pester Merriam all the time with all of my questions about all of this stuff, and she is always super duper helpful, has answers for me, has moral support for me. And what that led to was I didn't just do one informational interview. I then, after the one that was for FourthBrain, I went and networked with a bunch of industry people. And honestly, I hate that word networking. We can talk about that later. But what really happened is I made friends with a bunch of people in the industry that I wanted to be in by just reaching out, by finding shared interests, by having conversations that we were both super psyched about. And that has directly led to me having a job in the industry. So I just want to highlight that part of yeah, the curriculum is going to give you the background that you need in terms of education, skill set. But the career services part is going to be basically up to you to make use of the resources that you are given. And Merriam is kind of that foremost resource there. So I just felt super supported, and I wanted to highlight that part because, again, I think that's key. You could have all the knowledge in the world, but if you don't know anybody, it's going to be hard to get a job.
Great. Thanks for that overview, Matt. Really appreciate, that background and perspective. There's some questions coming in. I'll feed them back to you a little bit later. Let's move over to Janvi. Do you want to tell us a little bit about your background and what you're looking for? And you were going to tell us a little bit more about the curriculum structure.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks, Molly. So thanks for giving me this opportunity to share my experience. So hi, everyone. My name is Janvi. I'm located in San Francisco Bay Area. So before joining FourthBrain, I realized that there were certain areas where I was having knowledge gap, and I kept looking. I kept, learning on my own, but I never get that confidence and that, comfort that I know the concepts well. So my background is, is engineering. I have a PhD, and I always like to go deep into, into concepts. I don't like superficial knowledge. So what I was looking for was more like a structured program where I learn things from basics and I don't jump right into, complicated topics. So FourthBrain program, when I looked at the curriculum, I realized that they had a very structured step-by-step process. So it builds, as Molly highlighted, there is like prerequisite course work that you kind of highlights like what key concepts you need to know before you start learning about machine learning. So that kind of refresher and everything. So they have very well organized their program. So that way it will guide you to determine what concepts you need to focus on. And as you progress through the program, you will see how your knowledge is increasing from where you started and where you are now. So I was quite benefited by that. And as Molly and Mariam highlighted, like this is quite intense program. You have to You have to have the willingness to commit. You have to engage yourself. And, absolutely, if you're coming, I mean, if you are joining this program, it is obvious that you're committed to make a difference in your career. So, take full advantage of all the great people you will meet, great knowledge resources that you will learn about, and also like the professional world. I mean, as it was highlighted, most of us come from like tech background, or we're already being employed, so we understand that part of it, professional world. But then how to leverage that and move on to the next level. So this program will help you with that. So yeah, feel that's pretty much I had to share.
Great. Well, there are some questions coming in, so I'll circle back and feed them
Sure.
out to the rest of the students. So, Ron, would love to hear from you again, what you were doing beforehand, what you were looking to do with FourthBrain, and you were going to talk a little bit about the weekly live sessions.
Yeah, so my name is Ron. Good to be here with you guys. I have experience as a data engineer for a few years. And before that was a full stack developer. So I have engineering experience, but I've always had on the side this interest in machine learning and artificial intelligence. And I've always just been a tinkerer who has tried to self-study and self-learn. However, like Janvi had mentioned, I didn't know that I had the confidence to actually go get a job doing this full time. And so as someone who's taken some Coursera classes, even gotten some one-on-one tutoring in linear algebra, I had all the background, but the leap was what FourthBrain, I think, helped me to do. So what I'm doing now is finishing this up. But, I think it's really cool to think. I actually just yesterday got an email saying I'm going to get an offer from a major like social media company to do machine learning engineering. So that's total round trip. And that wasn't even my first choice. And I want to tell you guys a quick story about, I'm going to talk about the live coding assignments, but then I also want to mention, I have to give a shout out to Miriam on the career services front. So I have to talk about that for a minute. So first, just on the live coding, I think what was really helpful was sharpening your skills and getting ready for interviews, because interviews are usually something you should expect to do without Google. And yet, as a practitioner, you are always on Google. So trying to make that separation. But the live coding assignments, if you want, can be that opportunity, because it forces you to think specifically about how the algorithms work and how that they're used. And so, yeah, for those who will join the next cohort, I totally recommend that you try to treat them as interviews, because they're the best preparation. Because in the interviews that I did in mock in connection with FourthBrain, and also one I did on the side, they asked questions that I had done in the live coding assignment. So it was cool to see that connection there. So that's just like a PSA that I'll make. On the career services front, I didn't know what to expect. And, if I had stayed in my old job, I would have been fine with that. But I did want to get into machine learning engineering. So it's been really cool that it looks like it's going to work out. But the story about Miriam is a couple things. One, the resume help, because as Matt said, this is such a varied field, and what people are actually looking for in resumes is not something we actually know as practitioners or people trying to be practitioners. So having some real insight on the resume made a key difference. And I think the offer that I got yesterday, or I'm pending to get, was directly based on having a good resume. And then the next thing was making connections with people. So there's a mental wellness company on the West Coast that I had randomly applied for a couple of weeks. And I just told Miriam about it. I tend to just slack her at random times about what's happening in the job hunt. And she asked me about the company name, and she immediately knew someone who worked there. So after one of the sessions on Saturday, she said, here's his number. You should just call him and let him know you're going to have a first round interview there. And I said, okay, didn't know what to make of it. So I just texted him. I had his cell phone number in a few minutes. I think he gave it to me, or Miriam gave it to me. And so we talked after class one Saturday. He just gave me a walkthrough. It turns out that actually he was the person who did the second round interview. So like, it didn't change the outcome that I spoke to him ahead of time, but how for someone who's trying to get into it to like feel like you're at ease because you know who you're talking to. And he told me what to expect. as, while maintaining the integrity of the interview. You just said this is what you should kind of be ready to talk about. And as a result, I was able to make it through the first 2 rounds and then do the take home. And I have on sites at that company next week. And so it was so cool. But I feel like Miriam made that happen, even though I did some of the work. And I think it's a real good sign of how hands-on the career services here is. So I'll stop there.
Thanks, Ron. Nice job, Miriam, and nice job, Ron, to give yourself some credit too. You put in a lot of work as well, and congratulations on that offer. Great. So I see a lot of questions coming in. So I'm going to keep the questions coming. We're certainly going to circle back. There's a few that have come up that I'm going to put out there. So this first question I think is appropriate for anyone, any student. Brian, you too. You have a lot of experience in this field. How is FourthBrain different from other training programs? I know that a lot of you have maybe taken other courses, taken other boot camps. Brian, you've taught a lot of places. What do you think makes FourthBrain different? I have my answer, which I will give at the end, but I'd love to hear from the rest of you as well. Anybody want to take that?
Looking at the curriculum, it's the contemporary aspect. It's looking at what people are doing now in industry and then seeing how we can learn those techniques and how they're using it. Modern tooling, modern frameworks, modern approaches.
Thanks, Brian.
If I could talk about that also real quickly from a career services perspective. So a part of my job is talking to a bunch of employers, like, Matt and Ron just said. And so one of the things that they bring up is that they are looking for machine learning engineers who can communicate their thought process when talking about projects. And so that's something that we really focus on in the curriculum. And that's a whole part of project presentation days. Yeah, you deploy this model and that's great, but like, how do you talk to someone who doesn't understand machine learning engineering? And so I think that's what makes our program really, really special.
And just to piggyback on that, I think a big difference with FourthBrain versus a lot of other really, really great courses that are out there, whether they're on Coursera or any of these other sort of like MOOCs platforms, is the collaborative aspect, is the fact that for hours a week, you are on a call with other people coding, communicating about concepts. When there's somebody on the team who doesn't get something, it really sharpens your skills as a student to have to then assist another student in learning that concept or troubleshoot something. And that's a lot of stuff that you end up doing working in this field, right? Is like this rapid process of learning a new concept, communicating about it with your team, troubleshooting things. And then just to say the same thing for the capstone project is really similar in terms of having a large scale collaborative process with other people and having to do all of the quote unquote soft work that sort of goes into that. I think that was really key.
Great. Oh. Go ahead, John V. Were you going to say something?
Yeah, I was just going to add to what Matt said. So we're not just doing, when we are working on a group project or something, we are not just doing technical work. We have to do project management also. We have to make sure we are meeting and communicating with our instructors, with our subject matter experts, and within the team as well. So for example, on my project, I am the project manager, right? So I am the one who's doing that aspect of it, making sure we are meeting the timeline, the goals, and everything. So it is kind of an all-round experience. You get to go into deep, as well as you get to know what you will actually be doing in an industry as well, where you will be working with people from different backgrounds, and then how do you kind of bring everyone together and attain your goal and make sure you're communicating and setting the expectations correctly.
Great. Great. Another question that came up that I think is also, relevant is sort of just where the ML field is going. I think, Brian, you might be a great person to answer this, or maybe one of the students who's had a recent interview could also comment about sort of how FourthBrain is aligned with sort of where we see machine learning going in the future.
Yeah, I definitely see it expanding its role. It's going to go into different places where you don't really expect machine learning to go into. There might be agricultural aspects of it. All over the whole world, lots of industries are looking and seeing how machine learning is approaching that. And then that impact directly means that we have to care about fairness, bias, and explainability. And so our curriculum is aligned with that. So as you go into, say, the medical field, that's going to have a separate set of demands than say other fields, and we're going to help navigate that and how different industries expect different outcomes from their machine learning models.
Thanks, Brian.
I would say all of that is super duper true, super valuable. Another thing that I really like about about FourthBrain, and both where it is and what I've seen from my experience with it, and I think where it's going is the focus on ops and ML ops, which is I think just a huge growth area within industry. I think that essentially as companies are picking up ML, as Brian was just saying, as a core part of their business, they have to build out entirely new types of infrastructure. And just I work with ML ops people like all day, every day. And so I think there's just a huge amount of potential there. And so for the people who are in the program and really getting to know that, I think it's a good way to be in on the ground floor of sort of like a distinct new field.
Great. Miriam, I didn't know if you had anything to add as well.
I think just kind of piggybacking off of that, I think ML Ops is going to be really huge. And so I'm super excited to be a part of that, and just kind of talking to employers and hearing them mention ML Ops and where, ML Ops is going is really exciting. So I think that's definitely one great aspect of our program.
Absolutely. I have seen a couple of questions about our ML Ops program. We do have an ML Ops and Systems program as well, in addition to the Machine Learning Engineer program. That one is starting September 21st. So we will be holding an info session about that one probably later in August. So you can get to know more about the ML Ops program, but definitely go to our website, check it out. We did have an info session last month, which you can find on our YouTube channel if you are looking for more information about the ML Ops program specifically. Great. I'm going to take this time right now to run through a couple of shorter answer questions. So again, please put questions in the chat. I will bring them back to the rest of the group. Couple little things that I saw. AWS credits. So while you're in the program, you will get a budget to use probably on AWS to do your capstone project. So that won't be out of pocket. That's part of the tuition. So when you're thinking about your capstone project, if you're running models or deploying to the cloud, you will get a budget to use. There also was a question about the Tuesday, Thursday versus Saturday sessions. So for the machine learning engineer program, you pick either Tuesday, Thursday, or Saturday. So you don't have to attend all three. Tuesday, Thursday live sessions are Tuesdays from 4 to 7 Pacific times. And the Saturday session is 9 to 3 Pacific time. Brian is leading both groups. Both sections are running through the curriculum at the same time, so you'll be doing the same things each week. It's just those live sessions are different, and you can pick which one you prefer to attend. Let me just see what other quick questions. One person asked about the communications, collaboration, and ethics piece. That is an integral part of our program, and it's not something that we can separate out or even exist separately from the main program. It's integrated throughout, and we think that that's a really important part of our program. Okay, let me see. One other question that I have, actually one more question, asking about the tuition and sort of what it includes. So a key part of our program are these live sessions led by instructors. So this isn't the same thing as an online course where you're sort of going through it on your own. This team aspect, cohort-based aspect of live instruction and live support from our career services is really the key piece about what makes FourthBrain different from other online programs. Great. I have a couple little questions. One that I'm going to give to Brian, and it's about some new architectures, including transformers and attention-based networks. Is that part of the program, or how might that be incorporated?
It is. It will be part of the program, and in particular, you could also go deeper when you do your capstone style projects. But these transformer models have really revolutionized first natural language processing for allowing us to have a deeper understanding of how humans communicate and having the ability to then have computers mimic how them communicate. But then those are now expanding into image processing. So it's a really great time to get in on this, and these are really revolutionary frameworks that we'll cover.
Great, thanks, Brian. Great, just keeping going through my list. One question about the instructor. So Brian is our lead instructor, but we also have additional instructors for the program. So we will have 2 associate instructors, and then we have 1 TA. So there will be a total of 4 staff members supporting this July cohort with a variety of backgrounds. Brian has already shared his background, and then the rest of the team is meant to complement each other. So we have a variety of academic, professional, and teaching backgrounds across the core staff. So like I said, so there will be 4 instructors as part of this July cohort. Great. So there's a question that I think is actually good for Miriam, and actually any of the students who've recently been in an interview can also share. It's about
Yeah, Molly, I can't hear you.
Hi, everybody. Can you hear me now?
Yeah,
great. Sorry about that. My lost connection for a minute. So the question, Miriam, is about machine learning interviews. How do we include data structures and algorithms? Do we teach that? And maybe one of the students who's recently had an interview can talk about that a little bit.
Yeah, that's a great question. So basically, we do a couple of things for interviewing. So the first thing is when the company that we partner with, the mock technical interview that you get, they will go over data structure and algorithm questions. So you will have some exposure to that. And the other thing too is that you know, I like to do research. We do one-on-one coaching. I can walk you through interviews, and we can kind of decide what best to prepare for an interview. You know, Ron and I actually, we reviewed a whole entire presentation that he went through, and I walked him through that. So definitely there's also individual support as well. So you definitely get both. You get the data and algorithm structure from from the company that we partner with, from an employer. They're going to do a mock technical interview with you that way. And then also I do one-on-one coaching, and I can provide resources, and we can walk through any presentations that, you know, you might have to give for a certain job.
If I can add one thing, it would just be, yeah, Miriam helped me, because one of the skills is presentation skills. So I did an interview. I mean, I did a take home, and they gave me some feedback. And now in the on-site for this role, which I'm really excited about, I need to like respond to that feedback. So the presentation element is really important for interviews. I think I would say 2 things about interviews, having done a few now. The first thing is most are pushing for fundamentals. So it's, I think that's the key. Like, so the class is going to take you in a lot of, you know, very far directions. You're going to learn about transformers. You're going to learn about ImageNet and, you know, the latest and greatest. But for the most part, they really just want to know, do you understand how to formulate a problem, a machine learning problem? Do you know how to solve it? Do you know the basic core algorithms? One interview question was, explain the most basic of machine learning algorithms to me end to end. That was the question. So just to give you an example. The other side of it is that engineering, I mean, machine learning engineering is still engineering, and you still need to write code. So they want to see you do that. So I think a good preparation for those segments of those interviews is definitely your classic HackerRank or Elite Code kinds of things, because you're going to need to answer that. As an example, I had an interview recently where I had to write a function that was recursive, which is kind of challenging at times, but it included probability for the ML piece, just to give you a taste of some of the things you might encounter.
Yeah, strong cosign on ML eng interviews, including data structures and algorithms. In a lot of ways, they're going to include the components you'd expect from a software engineering interview in addition to ML specific elements. So those are things that are still super important.
And one more thing I would say is that because someone who leaves this program is likely not going to be a senior, is not going to be a longtime practitioner of ML, in order for them to feel like they can take a chance on one of us, they want to see the strong fundamentals. So that's another reason to lean into them, as the class allows you to, as the interview prep allows you to, and in your own personal preparation.
Great, thank you for those answers, and sorry for those audio issues. I'm glad that we reconnected. Great, so there are a couple additional questions. The next cohort, so this upcoming cohort begins on July 27th. The one after that will be in October. And you can apply to both programs right now in the application. So you can indicate if you're interested in July or October. So that's there. There's a question about sort of the volume of curriculum we have in a short time frame. And specifically, is a window enough for, or is the window that we have enough to cover all of these pieces? So I'm gonna hand that back to either any of the students who've been through the program, or Brian, if you want to touch on, a little bit about the depth that we go into, or sort of what the focus areas are when we have a lot of content to cover in a short amount of time.
I'll take that first. So the idea behind this, it has to do with the hybrid approach to our instruction. So we have these initial videos. So you see those videos on your own. Then we make sure you kind of have a good understanding of that. Then we come back and review that material. You can ask some deeper questions about particularly difficult parts. Then you kind of do that weekly project on that. So that gives you 3 opportunities to revisit the same curriculum. That allows you to hopefully get a good handle on that. But then, there is a limit to how deep you can go. But if you do have a specific topic you want to go deeper on, that's where the capstone project is. So there always is that real strong tension between breadth and depth. And that's how we try to balance it in this regard, where we give you that breadth, but then you can go deeper onto specific topics if you choose. I'll turn it over to the students. I think they'll have a firsthand experience with that.
Yeah, I can share some. So, right. So basically, as as Molly and Brian highlighted, right? So we have like when you start per week, you will have some videos to watch. Then based on those videos, there will be certain assignments that will give you an opportunity to test the learning on your own. And then you will have another opportunity where you will be in the live session, where you will be revisiting those concepts that you have learned on your own after you complete a lecture on those concepts. So that way the most important part is that you have done your work, right? You have listened to those videos and you have some questions or some open items that you would like to discuss. So if it requires you to do that part. If you are not prepared, you may feel a little lost, but still there will be an opportunity because you are going to work on the assignment in the class. So that will help you at least highlight the key items that you need to focus on, and then you can go on your own later and revisit those videos and then follow up if you have any questions. So, and with regards to the depth, if you are interested, I mean, there when the in the material there are resources that are being shared. So if you are interested in some particular topic that you want to learn in more, you want to know how it is derived, you can refer to those resources. And then in the Slack channel, people keep posting questions, and we keep discussing that, and everyone pitches in with based on what they have learned so far. So it's quite interactive that way.
One thing I would add is it's very a la carte. So each person can decide how much they're going to glean from the material. I think also it's helpful to note that like this field is a research oriented field. Like you do, like if you get a role, you will be a practitioner, but there's always going to be an element of research because of how quickly the field is changing and how much, you know, there's still unknown about it. So like getting into the habit of just like reading, learning, and taking in information is almost like a part of the skill set you need to do the job. That's one thing I would say. And the other thing I think is you just find modes. Like a couple of things I did was one, I tried to get ahead on things that I knew. So I got ahead a couple of weeks early so that if something got hard later, I could spend more time on it because some things you may be more familiar with already. And yeah, lastly, I just try to focus on things in some cases that were more interesting because then it's easier to dig in and do. But in the end, sort of like graduate school a little bit, where like it's still up to how much you do. You can use that and not stress out over it.
I wonder if any of you can speak to kind of how you balance that time. I think many of you, most of you were working full time during this process. How did you balance the commitment to FourthBrain and your other commitments?
I would say it was very challenging. I have 2 kids, a full-time job. So yeah, I think since I enrolled, I have told everyone I'm not available on Saturdays, so don't disturb me. So yeah, my full Saturday is just dedicated to my learning. And during the weekdays, I would find, of course, I would find few hours, block my calendar and read about that particular week's material, and spend few hours on Sunday as well. So yeah, it's been quite busy, but it has been very challenging, of course. But as you are here, so you are committed, you will do it, so yeah.
I think for me, I just learned how to like there's keyboard time you need when you're like typing and needing to figure stuff out. And then there's like consumption time when you're just watching videos. And then there's like reading time when you're not on a keyboard. And I think if you just figure out in your week when your life allows you to do either of those three things, I think you tend to figure it out. For me, I have a young son. And so in the early mornings, like I would just turn on the videos and put them on the TV like they were child cartoons. And we just were watching them together, and that's how I got through it. And then I find other times for the other work. So I think segmenting it allowed me to do as much as I could.
Yeah, I will say that I was pretty lucky in a certain sense that I started the program shortly after the pandemic and like had more free time on my hands. And like Ron was saying, there's so much variability here in terms of how deep you can choose to go on any given thing that it felt really good in terms of like those of us who had a little bit more free time, because I was working part time at that point, could go super deep on stuff like the extra credit assignments and stuff like that. I could spend my whole Monday just sort of like, trying to optimize something, whereas everybody else in the program who's working full time with kids, etc., was managing. And so that variability in terms of like how deep you need to go on any given thing, I think gave the sort of flexibility that allowed everybody to succeed given their own circumstances.
Great. Thanks, everyone, for all your perspectives. We have 5 minutes left, so we're going to move into a closing right now. So what I'm going to ask each of our panelists to do is just, if you had to give one piece of advice to somebody considering FourthBrain, or you want to leave them with one thought, what would it be? And I'm going to call out Ron to go first.
I think if there was anything, I think if you're really interested in this, then I think you should go for it, because I think this will force you to make this time commitment, which is a serious time commitment, but then force you to really think about if this is the kind of professional thing you want to do. So I think that's what I would leave you with. Just go for it.
Great. John V.
Yeah, I'm pretty much the same. If you are actually in this info session, you are already on the way to become a machine learning engineer. So join FourthBrain, and get that, take advantage of all the resources they have, and have a successful career.
Matt, do you want to go?
Yeah, it's a tricky question, but I think the concept that this is a commitment to yourself is a really key one, because I really think that if people who are interested, who are here, are dedicated to doing this thing, to getting a job, to transitioning to whatever it is that you want to use FourthBrain for, you're going to do it, and it's going to be a question of what that path looks like. And I will say, for me, having a structured path with resources available to me was super key. I needed that for myself. So however you make commitments to yourself, like, that's going to be the key element here. So I think it's up to each person to sort of look at what their learning style is, look at how that they commit to things, and to understand that, like, this is one way to do that, and a really great way if you are interested in having collaboration, structure, and guidance.
Yeah, the thing like more which I found was quite useful. You will build connections. You will get to meet like-minded people, and you will network with them, and you never know. Like how that person or that individual can help you in your own journey. So that is I think for me that was also quite important, kind of aspect of this program. And so yeah.
Thanks. And Brian or Miriam, do you want to add any final parting thoughts?
Yeah, just to echo what everyone else has said, I'm really passionate about this topic. I'm really interested in the way that we teach it, where we have this group of people that are going on this journey together. So we get to build this community, work together to learn and work through this material. So yeah, if you want to go on that journey with us, I think this would be a good time to do it.
Yeah, and just to kind of piggyback with what Brian said, I've been, working with FourthBrain for almost a year now, and I've talked to so many employers about AI and MLE, and they're always super, 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 super impressed with FourthBrain candidates, and they're always excited to work with us. So I think that just speaks to the quality of the program, and I think that if you are nervous about getting a new job in machine learning engineering, but you dedicate yourself to this program, you will have a ton of opportunities. So just go for it.
Thanks to all of you for coming and talking to our prospective students. For everybody watching, if we didn't get to your question, I'm so sorry. Please email us. We are happy to answer any outstanding questions. You can email us at info@fourthbrain.ai, and we will get back to you with any questions that we didn't get to during this session. Go to our website. We have frequently asked questions too, so maybe your answer is addressed there if we didn't get to it in this session. Apply soon. That July 27th date is coming up quickly. We still have spots left, so we definitely encourage you to apply by the end of the week and get started on that process and start on that journey becoming a machine learning engineer. So thank you everyone for attending. It was really nice to hear from each of our students and grads and Brian, and we hope to see your application soon. Have a great afternoon.